Hello everyone, this is Brian bringing you episode 26 of my reusable space program career, which you are looking at as a launch that is designed to start getting my space program back on track after my less than awesome flying skills and my expensive purchase of the level 3 vehicle assembly building. At the top there you see a bunch of fuel and a fuel pod headed up to the station, and behind that, also from this booster, are 2 satellites that will be doing, I think, around 6 contracts between them. One headed towards Minmus, one headed towards Mun. So here we have the fuel pod coming into the station. I'm going to skip through a bunch of stuff here because the focus of this tonight will be a lot of orbital construction and sending a manned or Kerbalized mission to Mun, which is what it's going to take to get that base up and running, get everything back on track up there. And after fueling up the station, of course I landed the fuel pod, and this is actually worth commenting on because this was surely going to land short here, and I really didn't want to lose another one of these. This would have been the 3rd loss, so what I decided to do was to try and use lift to get it over towards the space station. You can see right here it would have landed right on the edge of that steep edge of that hill there where it goes to the flat ground. And so I start kind of angling it towards the space center, and it very agreeably heads on over there for a nice landing. And then here's a quick shot of the booster coming down on a now very mundane landing, and unlike the recent one that fell apart on landing, this one worked perfectly. And here is one of those satellites fulfilling first contract, the other satellite filling another contract. One is going polar and one's going equatorial. And the Mun satellite arrives at Mun to fulfill a contract there. And the Minmus satellite arriving at Minmus to fulfill its first of 2 or 3 contracts here. And here is the station crew arriving again. These are newer recruits that don't have any experience whatsoever, and at least they are now flying a SpaceX capsule that has the Super Draco thrusters, so I shouldn't have any incidents like the last one upon landing. Now on board that capsule were a couple of scientific instruments here that I'm going to add to the orbital transfer vehicle here, because this thing is great at maneuvering its way around the low orbits of Mun and collecting science. So with the addition of a thermometer and a gravioli detector, I can do quite a few more contracts. And here's the booster that's sent to that SpaceX capsule up into orbit, making its landing back at the KSC. Now my next launch, making the most use of each of these launches, is a little unusual. I have the crew that will make the landing on the moon inside of a lander here, and attached to that lander is a base that I'm going to attach to the bottom of this science lab. Remember, this station has 2 science labs attached to it, so I'm going to send one of them to the surface of Mun to reprocess science experiments on site. And once that's attached up, I'm going to move this lander over to another docking node on the station. And then, having successfully delivered the lander and the new base to the science lab, here is the booster making its landing at the KSC. Now, tucked away inside the MKS base for the science lab, I put a few items in there that are going to be needed on this science lab once it's on the ground. So first up, I'm going to place 4 of these connections. These are places where I can hook up the winch to if I need to. This is in case this thing ever falls over on Mun. It can be picked up again. And once I got all 4 of these, need a way to put lights on this thing too and angle these lights down towards the ground, so I'm going to use the sides of these end ports just as mounts, because there is no way to rotate those like that while doing an EVA installation. Now the ladder kind of gave me some grief. It was hard to get this thing installed in the proper direction. So you see me here checking it, and sure enough, it opens upwards rather than downwards, and it's not angled quite right. So eventually I did it with it extended on his back so I could get that. Now I'm not quite ready for the science lab up there yet. That's going to stay here for a while, but can get the OTV and the Kerbal crewed lander attached and on its way to Mun. Oh yes, I should mention I don't have any live commentary for this episode and the next episode as well, and that's because I actually flew all of these over some hours while on Easter weekend camping at a lake while the whole family was asleep, so I couldn't be yapping away on my microphone. And here they are doing the transfer burn and arriving at Mun a few hours later and settled into a nice low orbit that will pass over the poles. It's time to move resources around, get the Kerbals into the lander, and get them on their way. Now the resources depleted messages that pop up here are just because I forgot to unlock the resource storage units in the lander prior to decoupling. No big deal. I'm going to show this segment more at normal speed here. This is be pretty good for new players, I believe. So what I'm doing here is I'm setting up my nodes, my maneuver nodes, that will get me in a position to land over the landing site here. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up an inclination change about a quarter of an orbit away from the landing zone to try and move it closer. That was the first node. This is the second node, and this is the hardest one to do. If the ground level is at 6,000, I want to start my full-on deceleration burn about 4,000 above that, which is an altitude of about 10,000 meters. My orbit is at 20, so I'm trying to get a line here. I'm burning retrograde to get a line that is about half the distance between the surface and my current orbit. You need that 4,000 altitude or so that you have time to do your deorbit burn before you slam into the ground. Now, this node is fairly easy. You just place it pretty much over your landing zone, and then you drag it retrograde until you see the markers kind of flip around. I have to move this slightly to get it right. Okay, there's the flip. That shows you that I have neutralized all of my horizontal speed. And now I think my inclination changes a little bit off, so I'm going to tweak it here so that I'm right over the target. And that can be kind of hard because, you know, the surface is rotating a little bit. I'm down here at the pole, so it's not so pronounced, but if you're trying to do this elsewhere, it can be kind of interesting to get the timing just right. And now it's just a matter of flying those nodes. I think this is coming up on the deceleration burn. Now, towards the end of this burn, I'm paying attention to my surface horizontal speed. I want to get that as close to 0 as possible, which is also when your retrograde marker on your nav ball is up towards the top of the nav ball. So I flip this around, and there we go, going pretty much straight down. Now I just need to thrust at the right time and the right power to counteract gravity. Right here I'm seeing that my target, the pink marker there, is drifting a little bit away from the top of my nav ball, so what I want to do is actually thrust, I want to herd that retrograde marker towards the target. What I'm doing here is I'm just landing. I know there's flat ground to this side of these modules, so that's fine with me, and I'll move it in a little bit after landing. Fortunately, landing these small, lightweight landers here is a lot easier than landing the cargo lander with all that weight attached to it. So I should be touching down soon. I'm actually so focused on my nav ball I forgot to flip on my lights, which would have made this a lot easier. There we go. Touchdown. And I am on a slight hill here, and the reaction wheels on this are so strong it's trying to lift it off towards level because I have the autopilot set to sit straight up, so at some point here I go in and turn those off and it finally settles onto the ground. Now, I keep my solar panels folded in during landing because they are so fragile, and it's my habit to extend them out the moment after I land because I know I'm about to get busy here on the surface and I don't want to forget. But I kind of forgot that, you know what, I should really be closer to that module. I could probably just fly it over there, so this is kind of a replay of my skills learned while trying to land on the VAB to collect science during those very, very early flights in my career. So I tilt a little bit, head right for it, then go back upright and just, nice slow thrust, do this very, very slowly. Last thing you want to do is go too fast and go out of control. Eventually I have to counter thrust here to get it to touch down again. And I'm remembering that, oh yeah, my solar panels are out. I should fix that so I don't break them. I did this very slowly. Remember, you're seeing this at 3 times speed right now. Okay, that should be close enough to reach with the fueling hoses. And it looks like Bill, my engineer, is going to be the very first Kerbal to set foot on Mun. At least for me in this career, that is. And I love this stupid look on his face right here. He is so happy. Whee! Alright, Bill, let's speed up time here and get to business. Now, before I do anything, I'm going to hook up the fueling hoses between the power station and the lander, just in case I need power from the power station here. So the way to extend these pipes neatly and to a decent distance is to actually put down ground pylons. So there's a ground pylon, and then you can attach pipe end fittings to each side of this. Anyway, you'll see more of that later. You get the idea. There they are connected. I'm going to rearrange those anyway after a while. I set the ground pylons close to the module and the lander so that the pipes go... Oh, well, it looks like I didn't do it for this one just yet, but anyway, the pipe goes right down to the ground and across the ground nice and low to the other pylon and then up to the other item you're connecting to. Now I'm going to send these guys on over in the rover. That is why I put seats on that thing. To correct the situation over here, I need them to hook up the winches to the fittings so I can winch that thing back upright. Here we are, I got 4 of these to connect. There you go, grab that cable. I just got to make sure I attach it to the right fittings here. Connector ports, I think they're called. And let's get him out of the way. The very first Kerbal that I ever killed was due to a capsule rolling over on top of him, so yeah, that should be a safe distance. In case anything gets any more chaotic than it already is. So now I go and I lift the legs up. And it's kind of tricky because I can't just lift the legs all the way up and then pull on it. It'll probably just pull the whole thing over. So I kind of get a little closer, then raise it some more, then winch some more, and keep kind of working at it until I get it upright. Now I hope I get this right. I've had these mods installed for so long, and I think these winches are from Infernal Robotics. An awesome mod. It's got this nice little GUI here for the winches. Tells you all sorts of stuff that I have no idea what it means. Some of these are under more tension than others. And I'm just kind of working through all these until it gets right up underneath there. And I think it's going to need a little more space, so I'll jettison these extra docking nodes for now. Those came from that power unit when I dropped it off. I could just carry it over there like this. I'm just kind of worried about all that weight swinging underneath this tall, heavy lander, and I also want to see if I can actually get it to dock with the docking nodes. So I think I actually did get it to attach to the docking node. And we're off downhill to the rest of the base. Driving this thing around is quite sketchy. Narrow base, tall, heavy, low gravity. And I'm going downhill, and these wheels don't have a lot of traction. And at some point I'm going to have to hit the brakes here. Oh, not again. And yes, I had to bring Bill down here to do it all over again. I will save you from watching that tedious process. Back underway again. And this seems like a likely spot right here, just uphill of the power unit. Probably out of the way of any landers that might be coming towards this base. I'll go pick up those other docking nodes that I dropped on the surface later. It's time to have Bill and Jeb come over here and hook up the rest of the base and start generating fuel. Now, I did kind of underestimate how many pylons and pipe fittings I would need. I didn't realize I need a pipe fitting for both sides of the pylon like that. So I had to do some rearranging and kind of making use of the resources here. I also had Bill repair the solar panels. I sent up some extra solar panels. Oh, that was also in that storage. And now that the setup is complete, it's time to do some science. It's kind of funny, usually this is the very first thing I do upon landing, but all I was thinking about was making all those connections. Let's set up the obligatory flag. Let's see, what should I call this? Bungholio Base? No. I'll just call it Mun Miner Base for now. It may be dark, but it has fuel. Which completes a contract. And do the EVA report, do the surface samples. And I have a mod called Science Containers, which allows me to store more than just a single sample of a certain type. And while I'm doing that, much to my surprise, the lights start flickering out. I'm running out of electricity. That's strange. I have a nuclear reactor here. How is that possible? Oh, I need punch cards for this. Okay, I was not planning on sending a colony control center down here, because why would atoms need orders to do what they do? Well, alright, I'm going to have to send that module down too, and kind of hunker down until then. So while Bill and Jeb start busily figuring out how they're going to conserve energy, the Mun satellite has reached its destination to fulfill a contract. And now over to the OTV, which is also going to fulfill a bunch of contracts here. And here's another one. How am I getting 5 or 6 contracts like that? Well, what I do is, or 5 or 6 contract points, I should say. Well, what I do is I set up a series of nodes from one to the other. These are all pretty much inclination changes. Some of them have altitude changes too, if the node requires it. The node requires it, if the contract requires it for that location. So there you go. This is sort of like a Mun slalom course I'm going to fly. A little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit up, a little bit down. And whenever I get to one, I have to quickly double check and adjust and make sure the next one is still right on. Because the surface is turning, right? Inclination change. I'm readjusting that one slightly so that I pass over the target. You have to get, I think, within, what was it, 18, 19 kilometers? Fairly close. Maybe it was 8. I can't remember. Yeah, this one's about 8. And it is now time to bring this episode to a close. Thanks for watching. Next time we'll probably be setting up a colony control center. Fly with confidence.